Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is a podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of this episode is BYOP, Bring Your Own Pronoun.
Oh, boy.
The profound power of personal pronouns.
Oh, man. I feel like we're going to be walking through a minefield on this one.
No, I love it. I love it.
Oh, I've never seen people so upset as they are about pronouns.
I know. And we will get to that in a second. We have a lot of information to get through about pronouns. But we have to discuss, you and I haven't recorded an episode.
No.
In about 4 weeks. And a lot's been going on.
I feel like we failed our listeners.
I hope not. But I know you've been out traveling and working.
Yep. A lot of traveling. I'm actually in Chicago as we tape this.
Right. And you've also been following your son's band. On the road.
Yes. My son, and if you follow us on Instagram, which I highly recommend because the professor posts all kinds of hilarious and amazing stuff. And it's at Intro to Anthro, Intro to Anthro with two humans. I think. Is that our Instagram?
Yeah,
anyway, something like that. Or our Facebook. But yes, my son is the drummer in a hardcore punk band, and
I love it.
And they're amazing. They're called Start Today 357. If you want to follow
Today,
follow them.
Okay.
And they're on tour. They're on a 20-city tour in 30 days.
Oh my God, that is crazy.
I know.
That's two shows in one day, right? No.
It's only one show a day with a couple of little breaks, but that's it. They've been, oh my God, all over the country, from Oklahoma, Tulsa, somewhere in New Mexico.
I think you were down at Tucson. Were
Tucson,
you down at Tucson? Yeah.
And then they've been in Cleveland and Detroit, and they're out in Jersey right now on a 2 gigs for a festival called Hellfest. And then I'm leaving Chicago tomorrow to fly to Boston to see them in Boston. And then they're going to New York, and then Philly, and then I come home, and they keep going.
Oh,
they're
I love it.
All over the place, through Texas, through the South. They end up in Seattle, Berkeley, and then back to LA. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Start Today 357. I've seen them, like, heard them play. You've sent some clips.
Yes, I've sent you some clips. And they had a gig in Albuquerque, but then it got moved to Tucson. I was bummed you couldn't check it out.
But, I was going to bring them cookies. I think that's what they want. They really throw them at the audience.
I showed up in Chicago with I gave him some cash, a bunch of groceries, and helped him carry his drum kit to the van, and then I left.
That's perfect. That's a good dad. That's a good dad.
Later.
The other thing, John, I recently retired from my job with the federal government. That was the other thing that happened.
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, that was a big change.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I spend a lot of days. My grooming definitely is fallen off. I don't. Just kind of shuffle around and.
Well, you're retired now. Yeah, you don't have to pluck everything. You don't have to shave everything. I know you shaved your nether regions because all the young kids do that at work.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case I had a heart attack and somebody had to take my pants off in the office. Put the paddles on me.
You can let it all grow. Let it all go. Yeah.
But the thing is, too, John, you and I did see each other in June for a few days.
We sure did.
At my brother Steve's 70th birthday party.
God, that was fun.
In Las Vegas, New Mexico.
Yes. And Steve was so happy. He even said, "This is the happiest days of my life." I
I
just
know.
love that. He's
Dude,
such a great guy, and it was just so great to be there.
It was great. I was so happy. That's 70 is a record for McCray males. I usually don't live that long. So
You
he's
mentioned that in
holding.
your speech. He's got the record.
We were going to get him a stripper, and then we realized we couldn't afford a stripper. So then the next best thing automatically is we flew you in to perform.
I should have worn I realized later I should have worn a policeman's outfit that with, tearaway pants and done a striptease you're under arrest.
I love when you came. It was like flying you in to entertain the troops. It's like you came in with all the excitement of Bob Hope back in flying into Vietnam back in the 1960s.
Or maybe Barbie Benton.
Yeah. And while we were there, you and I actually went out and we explored historic Las Vegas, New Mexico.
We sure did.
And where I went to graduate school. And then we also went to Pecos National Historical Park.
Yep, and so we posted a couple of photos and a video from there.
Right, and they're on. If anybody wants to check on our Facebook page or Instagram or even we're on Substack now.
Yes, right. That's right. We're trying to up our game now that human number one is retired. We got to supplement things, if you know what I mean.
I got nothing but time. But yeah, and we ate a ton of great food, a lot of red and green chili, and a lot of sopapillas.
Christmas style.
Yeah, that's
as they like to
red
say.
And green together.
Yeah.
And you had we stayed at an old hotel that was built in 1898.
Yes.
Where Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders had their first reunion after the Spanish-American War.
Jesus, that had to be insane. That's a party not to be missed.
I know. We couldn't live up to that.
No.
And yeah, you see photos. There's like people hanging out of the windows of it and everything. They're all out on the railroad tracks.
Because they were all Harvard. A lot of them were Harvard grads pretending to be cowboys. So you can just imagine how they were after they survived the war to come back and just party it up and guns firing constantly. A little like LA.
I guess and probably the real cowboys were just kind of like rolling their eyes, like, okay,
they were like, right. I'm going to take a nap.
It's just so nice to be inside and have a hot bath every once in a while.
Exactly.
But I'm just going to mention, if it's okay, you actually had a ghostly experience in the hotel.
Yes. I mean, as people who listen to this podcast know, you embrace the idea, if I may speak for you.
Right,
you embrace the idea of there being ghosts. It seems like it's a combination of like sort of you would love it to be real, but you also have some cynicism about it. But at the same time, it's
the same way I look at Jerry Lewis. Like, I realize he's ridiculous, but I also love him authentically. I love him. It's the same with ghosts. It's the same.
Exactly. Exactly. Well said. And so this hotel is famously haunted. The one we stayed at. It's on all the ghost shows. And I kind of rolled my eyes at the whole thing. And then I in the middle of the night, I wake up and I hear somebody moving furniture on the ceiling. And it was like somebody was sliding a desk across the ceiling. And then I look out the window and there's a train. There were train tracks. There was a train going by, but it was silent. But I could see silhouettes of people in it as it's going by. And the next day, I tell you all of this.
Yeah.
And
we're in the lobby. The lobby. And you come down and tell. And by the way, we were on the second floor and there's nothing on the third floor. There's an empty attic on the third floor.
Right. Nobody's up there. It's all closed off.
Yeah.
And then the woman in the who was in the lobby, who runs the, at the front desk, she was like, what room were you in? 315?
Yeah.
I was like, yes. And she goes, oh yeah.
I know. That's where she wasn't even, she was talking to somebody else at the time. you were telling me, but she heard us and she
Yeah.
came over to us in the lobby and said, I'm sorry, I couldn't help it over here. What
Yeah.
room were you in? And she wasn't there when we checked in, so
Right.
she didn't know
She
what
didn't
room we were
know.
in. Yeah,
And she guessed before I told her.
I know.
She said, was it whatever the room number was?
215, 215 because
215.
it was the second
Yeah,
vote.
315 is where the ghosts were. But it
So it
was
was
great.
great. You got
I
the full
feel like I'm in
experience.
the
You got the
club
full.
now. I've
Yeah,
had a haunted experience. So yeah,
right.
that was great. That whole thing was
Something you can't
fun.
explain.
Yeah, I want to just
Yeah.
thank your family for having me, and that was a blast.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Like I say, it was really a hit. Really a hit.
Oh, it was
You could have
great.
taken your clothes off. Would have
Yeah,
made it a little bit bigger of a hit, but I think
I
it
was
was
up for it, but people were telling me to not. They were shutting me down.
Okay, John. So let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
I hope you like grammar because today we're going to be talking about a lot of grammar. And if you or any of our listeners don't like grammar, now is the time to leave.
I love
No,
grammar.
I was going to
I
say, no,
love
come
it.
back.
wait, come back. No.
Yeah.
I loved. I don't know why, but we used to graph out the grammar. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like you do all the arrows and I can't remember
Diagramming sentences. You would
diagramming
diagram
sentences. I loved
Yes.
that
Yeah.
in junior high school. I loved it. I
Same
don't know
here.
why.
And I consider myself to be a closet grammarian. I love like everything about grammar and language. And yeah, I was like one of the only kids in my class who actually loved diagramming sentences. And
Well, I didn't know that about you.
where it was something for those who don't know, I don't know if they still do it or not.
No.
But you would draw a line, a horizontal line, and then you'd put a vertical line in the middle, and then you would put different parts of speech. Yeah.
Yes. You would the middle line was to separate the predicate and the subject. Right? Wasn't it?
Or
and then
the verb and the subject would be separated there, and then you'd have like diagonal lines coming off.
Oh God, those diagonal lines!
I always laugh. It'd be like I was the one person who just wanted to keep doing it. Like even if my teacher pulled the paper away,
right?
I would be like, oh, and I'd still be
I took the liberty of doing a few sentences at home.
I'd still be diagramming what she was saying to me, like, John, you need to stop. And I'd be like drawing the line.
John, comma, you need to, salutation. Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious.
How about other grammar? Do you love other grammar? Do you for example, do you get nostalgic when you see an Oxford comma? Do you ever get?
I don't know what that is. I do use a semicolon, which I hear is going out of fashion like that.
I love the semicolon. I love the semicolon.
Well,
yeah, the Oxford comma is in a series. It's the comma before the word and.
Oh, I do use the Oxford comma, and you're not supposed to anymore, right? Isn't that gone now?
Some people say you should. Some people say there's really it's up to you. It's a matter of style.
Wow. But most real people argument out there,
right? Most people say to avoid if it helps avoid confusion, then you're supposed to use it.
Well, that's an odd thing to come out of the English language to try to make it easier to understand.
How about dangling participles? You ever get
I've got a couple in my pants right now.
I was going to say I used to drink. I used to drink with you, and I remember a few times when you were dangling a few participles out there.
Well, it was the 80s. It was a different time.
So, according to Grace Fleming at thoughtcode.com, quote, a dangling participle is a modifier that doesn't seem to modify anything. It occurs when the word being modified is either left out of the sentence or isn't located near the modifier. And a funny example she gives is, quote, and here's a sentence of an example of a dangling modifier or a dangling participle. Driving like a maniac, the deer was hit and killed. And of course, the question was, Was the deer driving?
Oh,
do you see how that was? Yeah.
Oh.
So, another one, vocabulary.com gives another funny example of a dangling participle. They say, quote, walking through the kitchen, the smoke alarm was going off.
Uh-huh.
And then you're like, well,
the smoke alarm was walking through the kitchen.
Yeah, that's it. Does it have legs? Does it have legs?
Don't let those participles dangle, people.
But that's like comedy gold for grammarians. You know what I mean?
They all chuckle.
Get out that red pen and circle it,
They're the same people who go, I don't know, can you? When you ask to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Are you able to?
Yeah.
No,
I just old.
May I pee?
Yeah. The centuries of teachers using that one. Or can you?
Can you?
Another particle of speech that grammarians get all worked up about is the split infinitive. And according to Grammarly.com, a split infinitive is when someone, and I say someone because I know you and our listeners would never do it.
No.
They place an adverb between the to and the verb in an infinitive. And Grammarly gives this example, quote, she seems to often be up and about early in the morning. She seems to often be up and about early in the morning.
Between to and be, you've got often. Right. The infinitive is when the verb is in the to, when you have a to run, to jump, to fly.
Exactly. You really are a grammarian. You really are into it. And of course, the most famous split infinitive of all time is the opening of the original Star Trek series, when they say that the mission of the Enterprise is to boldly go where no man has gone before.
And that just goes to show that you gotta break those rules sometimes, man. Because that is an excellent sentence. I'm sorry.
Right.
To boldly go where no man has gone. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, to go boldly doesn't hit you the same way.
I mean, certainly boldly to go.
I'm sure there were, like, when it first came out in the 60s, in the 1966 or whatever, there were like thousands of grammarians who had sat down to watch the original Star Trek episode, the pilot. And as soon as they heard that, they were like, oh, hell no.
Yeah. You didn't just say what I thought you said. Well, I was on a show called 10 Items or Less.
Yeah.
And that was set in a grocery store. And we got a lot of letters, and this is and emails of it should be 10 items or fewer.
No.
Yes.
They're still out there, the grammarians.
And we got a lot of those. People were like, it should be 10 items or fewer.
No. That's great. Even though in the grocery store it says 10 items or less.
They finally they finally found a vehicle where they could express their anger that they'd been holding inside every time they went shopping for groceries. God damn it! Now a TV show is even good.
That's what I feel. I mean, when they first heard that with Star Trek, like, to boldly go, I'm sure people were like, especially back in that day. It was like, at least the monkeys know how to speak right, like they can flip over to it. And I also thought that would be a great episode of Star Trek if the Enterprise were to encounter a race of grammarians.
That's not the highest rated episode, but good. Good canon.
The grammarian ship is uncloaking, Captain. And they've proofread your last transmission. Or
oh boy! Oh god!
Even Spock would be like rolling.
Put
his
him
eyes
on screen. Who puts me on screen?
They're not responding. Can you put them on screen?
Is it any? Who is it? Is it all of us to be put on screen?
And I'm sure even Spock after a while would be like, Jesus, you guys just lighten up, all right?
We know what we mean.
Yeah.
Come on.
How about, it's, Spock is right a lot of the time. But even computers and geniuses sometimes get things wrong.
Oh,
and
God,
I thought you would
just got to see a Mensa bumper sticker to know that.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, you'd have to have a lot of balls to like correct Spock, though. You know what I mean? Like, if Spock said something and you knew it was wrong, like if you said to him, like, actually, the name of the title of the song is something Spock, and it's written by George Harrison, not Lennon and McCartney or something like that. What if Spock was mispronouncing, suddenly started mispronouncing something? Would you correct him? Would you jump in
Spock?
there?
Hell no. No. I mean, I guess I'd have to take it on a case by case,
Yeah.
But,
if he was suddenly talking about, like, we need to strike the alien, and it's larynx. It's larynx. Would you say so? Or like, I need to consult with the ship's library. Would you say, like, hey Spock? Hey Spock.
Yeah, I think I would just call attention. I'd be like, did you just say library?
I don't know. Is English his second language? I mean, maybe his second language. I don't know. But it's like,
well, you're pointing out a major flaw in all of Star Trek, the universal translator that they talk about. Why does everybody speak in English? That's a big thing with Trekkies,
Yeah. Well, now we have it. I guess you can do that on your phones, right? You have translators for.
Oh yeah.
So, Spock seems like the kind of guy, though, that if you corrected him once in a meeting, he would just call you out on everything.
Yeah.
All the bullshit you said after that, all the stuff that was in.
And he would remember everything. That guy's a douche, man, to have Spock around. Oh God, here he comes.
If you've ever worked with someone even like a tenth of what Spock is, you realize how hard it is to work with him. How hard it is to
quick, climb down this tube. He's coming around the corner.
And he didn't bring anything to the potluck either, of course. But the irony about split infinitives, John, is that the rule against them isn't really a rule at all. And
what?
Grammarly says that there are a few rules of grammar that aren't actually rules. At any rate, rules that people like grammarians and linguists can agree on. These scenarios show that the standards and norms around language can be inconsistent and often confusing. Mm-hmm. One classic example of these non-rule rules is the common advice that infinitives shouldn't be split. So there's really no rule that says that you can't. It's just a style thing that people.
Yes, it bugs people. Right.
And so, speaking of that, today we're going to be
split infinitive, but may you?
Yeah. Oh, no, you're back in. You're in teacher mode. I just saw what kind of teacher you were. So today, John, we're going to be talking about a part of speech that gets even non-grammarians worked up.
Oh, boy.
People who usually wouldn't give two shits about grammar usage, but who become enraged when they encounter one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm speaking, of course, about personal pronouns, and in particular, non-gendered third-person personal pronouns.
Yes. Yes. They, them, there.
Right. In his 2020 book, What's Your Pronoun? Beyond He and She, linguistics professor Dennis Behrens says, pronouns are suddenly sexy. They're in the air, on the news, all over social media, generating discussion pro and con. When the talk turns to what's your pronoun, suddenly everybody has an opinion.
It's so true. God, we are just despicable little primates.
I know.
Snotty little douchies. I'm down on us as a species today.
Me too. And of course, Barron notes, quote, today's sudden interest in personal pronouns is tied directly to the recent focus on gender inclusivity non-binary gender, and gender nonconformity.
Right.
And so, in other words, what he's saying, if you want to get in a fight these days, all you got to do is go into a bar, find the biggest, meanest looking guy in there. And instead of saying, like, what's your problem, dude? You go, what's your pronoun, dude? You know, you say to him. And that gets you the classic saloon brawl. You know what I
then
mean?
You got trouble.
Like people being thrown out the window, chairs being broken, that bottle over the head.
Oh, my God.
And the grammarian has to come in there and straighten it all out and tell, throw them in the clink and let them cool off for a night, you know,
like a CSI person. They got a criminalist. You got to send a grammarian in,
right? So, in other words, people who would never even thought about an Oxford comma, a dangling participle, or a split infinitive are suddenly now becoming like just furious about certain usage, grammar. Basically, they're becoming a personal pronoun usage.
Yeah.
And I love the passion. I love the passion about it. But you know, you got to be consistent about it. So if you see somebody who splits an infinitive out there, you got to call them on it.
Yes. You should be just as upset about that.
Yeah,
people should be boycotting Star Trek right now.
Right.
And I gotta say, 10 items or less. You should be boycotting that too.
It really should be fewer. 10 items or fewer. I understand. And if you see somebody put a preposition at the end of a sentence,
forget about it.
Get in their face. Face.
That's something to be ashamed of.
Yeah. In fact, if we're going to activate the Marines and the National Guard, I say give them a copies of Strunk and White's Elements of Style and let them go out there and set up roadblocks and yank native English speakers out and see what, have them diagram some sentences.
We're going to graph it. Get a pencil out.
Let's just see how well you do speak, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that some people who are always screaming about everybody should speak English in this country would be a little surprised if suddenly someone said to them, you know, the English you speak isn't really that good. You know what I mean? It'd be a little shocking, I think, to them. And I've always found through my years of public service and also in education, I always find that the people who learned English as a second language overseas usually write English more grammatically correct than native speakers do.
Oh, yeah. But that's true with anything. If you're a Jewish convert, you know more about Judaism than a Jew. You know, it goes with everything. Yeah, for sure. I travel a lot, and they all speak much better English than I do.
Yeah,
much better.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. But everybody should speak English over here. But just like they just speak with a different accent, which we all do. We all do.
Right.
We do.
Right.
See episode 2.
Yes. Good one.
But today we're going to look at the history of personal pronouns in English and where all the confusion, frustration, and anger come from surrounding personal pronouns. And I myself, just a little aside, I myself always feel that anger is often confusion trying to save face and trying not to look stupid. As a species, we don't like to feel stupid. When we feel stupid, we get embarrassed. And when we're embarrassed, we get angry.
Right.
But sometimes if you know the history of something and why we do it, then you're not so confused and not so embarrassed and hopefully not so angry.
Yeah.
So
good. So you're making some changes out there. You're a part of the solution.
I'm retired. I got nothing else to do. But that's our goal today, is to learn more about personal pronouns. And, you know, even after learning more, you may still get angry. You may still get angry about them, but you'll be angry because you're an asshole. and not a dumb shit. You know what I mean? And
I prefer to be a dumb shit.
Me too. Because that's what I feel, that we have ultimately two choices in life. You know, instead of goats and sheep like they talk about in the book of Matthew, where, at the final judgment, the people are separated into goats or sheep.
Right.
I think we'll all be separated into two groups, assholes and dumb shits. and at some point, the good Lord will look at us all and say, well, were you an asshole or were you a dumb shit? And the thing is, with a dumb shit, there's always hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can always get better. You just didn't know better. You didn't know.
Right.
Better. Right. But an asshole. Yeah. Okay, so to begin our discussion, we need a little information about what a pronoun actually is. In the book, English Pronouns and Prepositions, Ed Zwick says that a pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. So
wait a minute. Wasn't Ed Zwick the guy who created 30-something?
Was he? This is what happened after he got canceled?
What? He's doing grammar?
There was one thing he always wanted to do. He got into writing just so he could do his grammar workbooks. His textbooks.
Sorry about that. But I think that's what his name was.
Was it?
Yeah.
As he's sitting in the room, as they're like workshopping they're breaking it down with all the notes up on the whiteboard. All he's doing is thinking about the grammar. He's just in his mind. He's drawing the lines, the horizontal line, the vertical line.
So funny. Everybody's like 2 a.m. and Ed's charting out each line.
Yeah, just hang on a second. Hang on. Read it back to me.
No. Oh no. We gotta get out of here.
But Ed, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny, but it's not grammatically correct.
Yeah.
So an example of a pronoun would be, for example, I could say, I went to see my mother. Mm-hmm. She was very happy to see me. And in that case, I've replaced my mother with she.
Yes. Isn't I also a pronoun?
That's a pronoun. And me is in there too. We got me in there.
God, that's chock full of pronouns.
Break that. It's like a pinata. Break that one.
God damn.
Pronouns fall out. But in that case, I've replaced my mother with she, and it makes the sentence flow better because I don't have to keep repeating my mother. I don't have to say I went to see my mother. My mother was very happy to see me. I was happy to see my mother too.
Right.
And remember Bob Dole? Bob Dole used to always talk about himself in the third person.
Yes.
Remember how hard that was? Bob Dole's not going to do that to you. Bob Dole's going to make this get done. I don't know.
There are a lot of sports figures who do that too.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about doing that? You ever thought about John Lehr's got to go to the bathroom?
Never.
John McCray's horny now. John McCray's horny. That's what I said to my wife. But if you notice, there is agreement between the noun and the pronoun. And in grammar, pronouns are supposed to agree with a noun in both gender and number. Okay?
Yes.
So you know already that my mother is female, and you know that my mother is a single individual. Therefore, if I use a singular female pronoun like she or her, you still know who I'm referring to.
Right.
Okay, my mother.
Yeah, it helps us. It's a shortcut.
Yeah, and it just sounds better. It just gets so old here. My mother is The book is very good. The book is...
First, my mother walked to the store. Then my mother purchased a melon. Then my mother took the...
Yeah. We'd all be like, Jesus Christ, just get on with it. Just get on with it. But if I said, I went to see my mother, he was very happy to see me. Mm-hmm. Or I went to see my mother, I was happy to see him. Mm-hmm. You might get confused because I was suddenly using the masculine pronoun he or him, which doesn't agree with the feminine noun mother.
Yes.
So you could see how pronouns start to play tricks on people's minds if they don't agree, if there's no agreement in there. And
we're beginning to walk into the minefield right now. I can feel it.
We're looking in right now, John. We're looking in. We're going to throw some tennis balls out there first and see what happens. And you can see how, changing a few small words here and there can start to confuse people.
Yeah.
And we've already discussed what happens when you confuse people.
Yeah.
So,
We don't like it.
Swick then says, pronouns are almost always very small words. This fact causes some people to think that pronouns are therefore a small and unimportant part of the language, but the opposite is true. And in his book, The Secret Life of Pronouns, What Our Words Say About Us, James Pennebaker separates words into two groups: content words and style or function words.
I can't believe these guys are writing books about pronouns. I would just want to put a bullet in my head.
You should.
How can you be that passionate about a pronoun?
It's fascinating. I got into it. I was buying them all. Anytime they'd reference another book, I'd buy it for this
Well,
episode.
you're amazing. You're amazing. They are lucky to have people like you out there. That's for sure.
Probably. Like I go on, it's like one copy. I should write a review of that. Just like one copy, one review. But Pennebaker says there's two groups: content words and style or function words. And he says that content words include nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So they're the ones that have meaning to them, like real meat to them.
Yeah.
And then he says style and function words include articles, prepositions, auxiliary verbs, negations, conjunctions, and of course pronouns.
Yes.
Okay, so you have content words, nouns and verbs, style and function words, pronouns.
Style and function are the nuts and bolts that hold it together.
Right.
It's like that train song that we grew up with. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Hooking up phrases and making them function. Something like that.
Yeah. It's better to stop now before we have to pay copyright.
The content, the content words are the boxcars. The smaller words are the hooks that hold the boxcars together.
Exactly, John. Because Pennebaker notes that the average English speaker has a vocabulary of about 100,000 words.
Whoa.
Of which 99.96% of the words we use are content words.
Uh-huh.
So most of the words we use are the content words.
Yeah.
But he says, that's the nouns, verbs, adjectives.
Right.
And those are usually the only words that we remember out of a sentence.
Right.
Okay, when someone says something to us.
Yeah.
But he says style or function words, such as pronouns and conjunctions, make up only about 0.04% of our vocabulary.
Wow.
And then he says, in all languages, a small number of function words are used at dizzying rates compared to a large number of content words that are used at very low rates.
So, yeah, it's like building a deck. The content words are the 2x4s, but all those nails, nails that hold it together.
Use them all the time, but we don't notice them because we use them so much. You know what I mean? All you notice are the
fall
woods.
Apart without them.
Right. Good analogy, John. Good metaphor.
Thank you. I'm going to keep them coming.
And then Pennebaker says something interesting. He says, quote, pronouns, prepositions, and other function words are the keys to the soul.
What? Somebody had too many glasses of wine while he was writing his book on pronouns.
Yeah. Something tells me he may have he was like his own editor too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like when you see a director doesn't want to cut anything out of the movie.
His wife read that chapter and was like, "Are you sure?" Yes,
I'm not changing anything. Yeah. I'm an auteur. So he says that stealth words that are used at very high rates are short and hard to detect, which is what we were saying.
Yeah.
And are processed in the brain differently than content words.
Okay.
And he says the stealthy function words, such as, our pronouns, are very, very social. And he says that, he's talking about that, because they include people, like the pronouns that you're using, these function words, they can include people if we say we or in other words.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. They're connected to people, generally speaking.
Right. And we can use them in social situations, like if you use and or with or something. It's something that's happening with our interactions with other people.
Okay.
And then Pennebaker notes that the distinction between content words and style function words also occurs at a fairly basic level in the brain. And
how does Pennebaker know all this?
I don't know. but the important thing through research, what he says, researchers have found that it's often very hard to master the stealthy function words, like pronouns, after the age of 12.
Really?
Yeah. So as we get older, it gets harder for our brain to be able to process
that makes sense, because you see people who learn English at a later that's where they have trouble. Those little words.
The little stealth words, the little function words are the ones that they're all good with the vocabulary. You can learn the vocabulary. But I think that might be something to remember when you see like old people suddenly losing their minds with like new pronouns, or people trying to come up with new pronouns for themselves. Is that our brain after the age of 12, and not even old people, I guess, like teenagers and people in their 20s losing their minds. It's because our brain has trouble processing those little tiny pronoun words, those stealth words, function words are harder than doing the big content words.
And they don't want to be embarrassed, and so then they get angry. As per your theory, which I agree with.
Exactly. So why is the non-gendered third-person personal pronoun specifically such a problem for English speakers? And the simple answer is because we don't have one. Dennis Behrens notes that English has masculine and feminine and neuter pronouns, but it is missing a pronoun for someone whose gender is unknown, unclear, non-binary, or other. And Behrens says that for more than 200 years, long before the words transgender, which came into our vocabulary in 1974, cisgender, which came in 1997, and gender fluid in 1987, entered our vocabularies, a small but vocal number of writers, editors, and grammarians have lamented the fact that English has no third person, singular, gender neutral pronoun to refer to both a man and a woman, or to either a man or a woman, or to conceal gender, or to prevent gender from causing a distraction.
It would be, it would be super helpful in lots of ways to be able to, even talking about concealing gender, just looking at it from that point of view, it would be great for mysteries and things like. It'd be great to have that option. You know what I mean?
For mysteries, at least we got to come up with one of these,
I mean, just as a writer, I write fiction, so I could see that could be helpful.
Yeah. And but we just don't have one. We don't have one. Modern English does not have one.
Why?
And Behrens says that, recognizing that gender is political as well as grammatical, people have sought a pronoun, some calling it the missing word. So this is like you got the missing link, and now you have the missing word that includes the traditional binary genders or all genders and doesn't leave anyone out. And this started in the 18th century. We're going back to the 1700s. This is Behrens talking, a few adventurous souls thought that the best way to deal with the missing word would be to invent a new one. And there have been more than 200 of these pronouns invented, most of them before the 1970s, and many of them before 1900.
Holy shit. Like what? Do you have some examples?
I'll give an example. We'll get to a list of examples later.
Oh my God, that's great.
But the thing is, if for all the people that think this is something that was woke or something that just started happening, people have been looking since at least the 1700s for a non-gendered third-person personal pronoun. Okay, this is nothing new. This is nothing new. And to give you an example of how far back this goes about gender, in 1792, the Scottish philosopher James Anderson wrote that we actually needed at least 13 classes of gender in English. And in addition to the standard 3, masculine, feminine, and indefinite, Anderson said we also needed a gender for eunuchs and castrated animals, and a neuter gender for inanimate objects that had no sex.
Right. Well, that makes sense for sure.
And Smith also found it Anderson also found it inconvenient that the feminine her had to do double duty as both object and possessive, while the masculine used the distinct forms him and his.
Yeah.
So if you notice, like her book, I saw her, you
Yeah.
don't have that. I mean, we're using the same word for two different
Mhm.
purposes in speech.
Whereas on the masculine side, it's his book or him.
Right.
Wow.
So you see how people kind of go crazy about all these different little parts of speech. You know what I mean?
It seems like the masculine is the one that's dealt with the best. It has the most
Yeah.
options. It's set up the best.
Right. Which probably because most of the grammarians back in, when modern English was coming up, were all men, obviously.
Yeah.
So you don't really care.
Whatever.
But until, we still haven't come up with, I tried to think of it, like an alchemist working away in the Middle Ages, trying to come up with, the philosopher's stone to turn iron into gold.
Right.
And he's like, I got it. And people are like, what is it? What have you found that you can make gold? It's like, no, I found a third person, non-gendered personal pronoun, and Behrens notes that not all languages actually deal with gender the same way. For example, the Basque language and Turkish don't distinguish between grammatical gender at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's got to be hard. You got to run into trouble there. Well, the Basque, those guys were just out fishing cod, weren't they? Or what was the fish that the Basque?
Yeah, cod.
Cod. They had all these secret cod fisheries, right?
Yeah, that's what they say when in the book Cod by Kurlansky. I think Mark.
Oh my God!
He says when the French and British and Spanish fishing fleets finally reached Newfoundland, and they thought they had discovered that they already found Basque fishermen, but the Basque hadn't told anybody. And it's like your fishing hole. So in some languages like French, Spanish, and Italian, they have gender for different words that usually depends on the ending of the words. So a word that ends in A is considered feminine, and a word that ends in O is considered masculine.
That's true. Look at the word hello.
Yeah.
Or right. Jello. So masculine.
Behrens notes that while Old English nouns had three genders, masculine, feminine, or neuter, just like in modern German, by the Middle English period, English nouns had lost their grammatical gender, as had English articles and adjectives. So English still has certain pairs of nouns that indicate gender, like if you say lord and lady.
Right.
For example, you're putting a gender in there.
Right.
King and queen and lion and lioness.
Yes.
Where you actually have different words for trying to determine the gender of whatever we're talking about. But modern English also has certain words like book or albatross or person, this is Behrens speaking, that express neither grammatical nor biological gender. And they're just gender neutral or gender inclusive.
Okay.
So again,
like flight attendant.
Right.
Versus stewardess and steward. Right. Now we've got flight attendant.
Right. Or book. I keep thinking about book. It's like don't let it get out that books are non-gendered, because that's the last thing we need to do. People will be screaming about cleaning out our libraries because we got a bunch of non-gendered.
I'm cutting this out of our podcast. Now you're lighting a brush fire. Now they've got two reasons to ban books.
I know. They're non-gendered. Look at all the non-gendered books in there, just rubbing up against each other. And then there's two different ways that when it comes to assigning gender in languages, and that's the semantic and the formal. So in the article Linguistic Gender Marking and Categorization, Eric Yorkston and Gustavo de Mello note that semantic systems assign a gender to a word or noun based on the meanings associated with the underlying noun or object. Okay. And formal systems, on the other hand, assign the gender to a word based solely on the structural properties of the word alone. That is, the assigned gender is independent of the object it represents.
Okay.
So in other words, in a semantic system for assigning gender in a language, it's you're looking at the cultural meanings assigned to the object itself or associated with the object.
Okay.
So Yorkson and DeMello note, in English, we think of all floating vessels as being female.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Whether we call it a boat, a ship, a barge, whatever, they're all female.
Same with hurricanes until not too long ago.
Right. Suddenly we say, like, why should they be women? Why is something so destructive and hurricane?
Yeah.
So, but in a formal system, the gender of the object is based on the structure of the word itself. Like we were saying, if it ends in an A or an O.
Oh, I see.
So, for example, the example that Yorkson and DeMello note is in a formal system like Spanish, the concept of a floating vessel on its own does not have an assigned gender.
Right.
Instead, it can be either masculine or feminine, depending on whether we refer to it as el barco or la chalupa.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So I want to warn all the old heterosexual white guys who are getting ready to go on a cruise. That feminine ship you get on in Miami may be transgendered by the time you reach Cancun and become a masculine El Barco. So be careful. So be careful. Be careful out there. Maybe you shouldn't go on the cruise. You don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, God.
And just to show you how arbitrary assigning genders to objects used to be, in the 1927 article, The Feminine Gender for Inanimate Objects in Anglo-American, T. Spartangren notes that Americans referred to the following...
T. what?
Spartangren.
Spartangren. Oh, sorry.
So he or she, I don't know, it's T, in 1927 noted that the following items are feminine in Anglo-English: countries, cities, ships on water or in air, trains, coaches, elevators.
What?
Motor car. Like, I want to get on the elevator and I'm going to take her all the way up to, floor, the 11th floor.
I did not know that.
Motor cars, the words relating to a bath, fiddle, gun, kettle, ball, ticket, house, party, or even in Tom Sawyer referred to a wart as a she.
What?
Apparently, yeah. And a tooth. Apparently people would refer to their tooth like, look at the girls here, like... Other things that were considered feminine in American English in 1927 were machinery, industrial plants. Like, well, look at that baby. Yeah. Look at that girl. My old girl.
Spitting that coal out.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Belching that. Look at my girl belching all that smoke out of it. Receptacles and hollow things, lumber mills. Like,
hollow
look at
things?
Yeah. No. That's a little obvious to me. A still, like a still, like, oh, look at her go.
Now you're making sense.
A thermometer. Give me that baby. Give me that girl. I've got a fever.
A thermometer seems very masculine to me. That's a dick.
Yeah. Doors and fences. Like you would refer to your fence in the feminine as like feminine. Clothing, wooden legs. I'm going to bed with my girl. Take my girl off and get in the bed. And roads, which of course we talk about Route 66 being the mother road.
Yes.
Instead of being like the daddy highway or something like that. And just before we go any further, I just want to take a look at Old English to show that everything else in language, just like in culture itself, is always changing. And that includes the meanings of pronouns and a lot of what we consider to be age-old rules that are set in stone have only recently been created, for example. And take the second person pronoun you good old YOU. In Old English, there were actually two second person pronouns, thou and you. And in his book, Pronoun Trouble, The Story of Us in 7 Little Words, John McWhorter, who actually hosts the Lexicon Valley podcast, which is another one of my favorite podcasts, if you get a chance to
really
to listen to it. Yeah.
All right.
It really gets down.
It gets down in there.
Yeah. Like you're really down. It's great. It's a great podcast. He says that in Old English, the second person pronoun thou was used when you were speaking to one person. And the second person pronoun ye or you was used when you were speaking to multiple people.
Ye was multiple people?
Yeah, like hear ye is actually it's like saying like here, all of you listen up. Listen up, all of you. Okay.
This is for you.
But if you if you were talking to one person, you would say like, and you knew them, you would say like,
hear thou.
Yeah, hear thou. Right, exactly.
Hear me.
But as far as thou and you, McWhorter says people of higher status use thou downward to people of lower status. For example, adults would use thou to a child, or a master would use thou to a servant. And unfortunately, at that time, even a man would use thou to a woman.
Right.
Okay.
It was a way to assert power.
Right. You were like just reinforcing it. Like, I'm above you. I'm going to call you a thou. I'm going to use that.
But if you call me with that,
right? So people,
it doesn't go that way.
Right, lower social status, you had to use ye upward. So if you were talking to a lord, you would say Your Highness instead of Thy Highness, for example, because you're using you going up.
I see.
And McWhorter notes that the plural you was also used as a polite second singular subject as a sign of respect, indicating that someone was a kind of royalty who embodied more than one soul. So usually YOU started out as a plural, but then we started using, like when you said it to a king, like, when they say Your Highness or something, you're saying that there's more than one of them almost. Like they have the power of more than one of them.
Right. They're more than one person. They're more than I am. They have God. They're ordained by God.
Right.
And they have a lot more going on.
And that's how when, like the royal we, like if a king or a queen says, we are not amused, what they're doing is they're talking like the entire nation. They're the embodiment of the entire nation saying, your joke isn't funny. Whatever. The entire nation, we are not amused. The entire joke.
Everyone but you is not amused.
So when and some people think that the change from you started to push out thou in modern English was because of the rise of the middle class, and when people were doing business deals with each other, and everybody was making money and everybody coming in, it became awkward to try to determine if it were the business associate if I should use you or thou.
I see. So you just everybody just picked you.
Right.
And went with it.
For the middle class. But everybody else, like the people still down below, the lower classes still use thou with each other. Okay.
Interesting.
And a couple interesting points McWhorter notes about thou and you throughout history. He says that Shakespeare's plays, in his plays, he plays around with that dynamic a lot between the use of you and thou. And you'll find it throughout his plays, but we don't recognize it anymore.
I see.
And he mentions a few examples in the book, but I immediately thought of the famous line in Romeo and Juliet, where Juliet says, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" And she's using a familiar second person thou, and she's not using the polite, distant you, which she would use. And if you go into the play, when she first meets Romeo at the dance, she uses you to him. Like she says, like, you kiss something.
Well, he's below her on the balcony, so she should be speaking down using thou.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of of William Shakespeare, I just watched Shakespeare in Love again.
Yeah. How was it?
That is a great movie. It was written by Tom Stoppard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was blown away. I was just like, wow, I forgot. This is really good. It was really, if you know anything about Shakespeare, it makes it even more fun. But
Who was which one of the Fiends brother? It was one of the Fiends or Fiends brothers,
yeah,
right?
it was not the one who continued.
Not Rafe, not Rafe
No.
Fiends or whatever, but it was
Yeah.
another one. But
Yes. God, good work.
I should watch that again. I haven't
It's
watched that
really
in years.
good. I recommend
Yeah.
it.
But anyway, but it's interesting there because if we had been alive at that time, and watching it when Romeo and Juliet were running off Broadway or whatever, back in the day at a cabaret,
We'd be,
in a bar.
we'd be groundlings, that's for sure.
Yeah. But we would notice immediately that she had started using thou in that speech, and notice that she was using a familiar form for you, and notice that suddenly they were equals. For example, that would have meant a lot to us at that time.
I see.
And to me, that explains a lot about Romeo and Juliet, because I've always wondered, like, they really had just met. You know what I mean? And then would you kill somebody that you just met them at a party and you get married and then like immediately kill yourself? It seemed like that relationship went really fast.
Yeah, I've had relationships like that.
I was thinking about like in Greece. Like Greece would be an entirely different movie if at the end like Sandy and Danny killed themselves. You know what I mean?
Well, they at least had met each other in the summer.
I know. They knew each other.
He showed
arguably
off, splashing around.
That's arguably better than, like, they know each other better than Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean? Oh God, yes.
That's the scene we needed in Romeo and Juliet. Is when they met at the beach that summer before she runs into him again.
I always wondered, was it the Australian beach? And how did his family afford to bring him to Australia for the summer?
I think they throw it in one line of like her dad is over working in Los Angeles from Australia, and he's been held over. Yeah, he's like, oh, my dad. They've extended his, they've extended his contract or something.
I never heard that, and I've watched that goddamn movie. My daughter was in love with that movie.
Yeah, everybody is. And you could see also the thou and you throughout Romeo and Juliet. When Tybalt, remember Tybalt is Juliet's cousin, fights Mercutio.
Yes.
And in that whole scene, when they finally are starting to get ready for the fight, they start out with you kind of using the polite or the plural form. And then at a certain point, Tybalt changes to the thou when he's talking to Mercutio.
Because he's like talking down to him.
Right.
Yeah.
And for us, we don't really capture that. But at the time, you would suddenly realize it'd be like him like, hey, you bum. You know what I mean?
Right. When a man uses thou to another man, it's an insult.
Right.
When a woman uses thou to another man, it's a form of very intimacy.
Right. And so Mercutio, at a certain point, Tybalt switches and he says, Mercutio, thou consortest with Romeo. And Mercutio's not going to take that. So then he switches to thou too. He was using you to begin with, but then he switches to thou too. Like, and he says, consort, what dost thou make us, minstrels? And thou make minstrels of us, look to hear nothing but discord. Here's my fiddlestick,
Yes, but I can translate that. He's saying, fuck me, fuck you.
Yeah. Go fuck thyself.
Yeah.
Tybalt.
Yeah, Tybalt. Thou me, thou you.
Yeah. So then when Romeo shows up in the same scene, Tybalt starts immediately calling Romeo thou too.
Oh,
and he says, Romeo, thou art a villain. So again, he's not only calling him a villain, he's not saying you are a villain. He's saying thou art a villain.
Yeah, you lowly scum.
And he's trying to belittle Romeo by using that thou.
Yeah.
And Romeo, because he's in love with Juliet and because that's her cousin, he uses thou, trying to be like, hey, we know each other, Right. So he says, Tybalt, I see thou knowest me not. I do protest I never injured thee, but love thee better than thou canst devise, till thou shalt know the reason of my love.
So he's trying to calm Tybalt by using thou, saying, hey, we're on the same side.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Tibble is taking it as he's rubbing his face in it.
Right. Exactly.
God, that's Shakespeare. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And so you can imagine, it's like when you try calling a drunk a friend right before a fight, it's like, hey, friend, I don't want to fight you, friend.
Hey,
It
bud.
just enrages. It just enrages them. And so you could see how it's exactly like you said. Tybalt is losing his mind at this point because it's like he should be calling me you. You know what I mean? I don't know this guy. Right. And so that's how when they finally get in the fight, and then like Tybalt kills Mercutio, and then Romeo has to turn around and kill Tybalt. So you can see at that point Romeo is like, we cool now, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I told you I love thee. You know what I mean? It's like, so another example of using thou or you, McCorder talks about, is Quakers. And Quakers refuse to use the word you to refer to one person out of devotion to equality among people, McCorder says.
The Quakers are pretty amazing. You got to give it to them.
I know.
They got a lot of good stuff happening there. Have you ever been to a Quaker meeting?
No, I haven't.
I've always wanted to.
Yeah, we should do it sometime.
Yeah.
We should go check it out.
I'd do it.
So, in other words, Quakers would use, instead of using you, which they thought that was putting one person above another person, they would always use thou. So when we hear them with their prayers or something, they're still using thou.
Right.
What a Quaker, we think it's all, they're really showing respect to that person, that nobleman or whatever. But to a Quaker, it's like the closest thing to a Quaker yanking off their shirt and saying, like, you think you're better than me?
Yeah, you're no better than me, thou.
So we would know that. And in most European languages, they still have the difference between a familiar you and a formal you.
Right.
For example.
Like usted and vosotros or nosotros or whatever.
And we've lost it. Like in French, you have tu or you have vous. But we've lost it. We just use you in English.
Yeah.
And Anna Livia, in her book, Pronoun Envy, Literary Uses of Linguistic Gender, says that during the French Revolution, the polite vous was outlawed in favor of the egalitarian tu, in the belief that linguistic change should parallel and help enforce social change. So they actually passed laws that saying that you couldn't use the formal. We all had to be equal.
Yeah.
And she continues that a similar pronominal change was imposed in Italy under Mussolini. Fascist ideology required that citizens used the egalitarian tu form for the second person singular in place of the customary polite third person form lei. So even the fascists were the same thing, where you can't use the polite form showing that somebody's better than you. We're going to use the same.
We're all the same.
Right. And she said then that while most speakers most of the time are content to use language to convey their message, at times of social strife, many turn to linguistic distinctions to provide validation for their political beliefs. And during the periods of political upheaval, she says, language is often seen erroneously as a source of natural, timeless laws, and proponents of conservatism will quote these laws as models for a well-ordered society. More radical elements will often counter by a demand for linguistic change. And so that's kind of what we're seeing at this point with the use of pronouns, of like people are trying to enforce that you have to use a certain pronoun to maintain social control of people. And they're talking as if these were age-old rules that can't be changed. But as we've seen with other pronouns are changing all the time.
And that's kind of the golden thread through this podcast is that culture is constantly changing.
Right.
And so if your point of view is to try to hang on to some fixed point, you're done for. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Exactly.
It's a fallacy.
And just to give you, let's go for some examples. Like, what pronoun would you use in the following sentences. Everyone should bring blank own lunch on the day of the field trip.
Their own lunch.
Right, you're going for there.
Yeah.
Each teacher must submit blank lesson plan before the start of the term.
There. Because you don't know whether the teachers are male, female, both, neither, whatever.
Anyone caught outside after dark must turn in blank hall pass.
Their hall pass.
Okay, so usually nowadays we normally go to there, but there is actually a plural. It's a plural. It's not a singular.
Right.
And it's grammatically, people will argue, even though some people say that there was being used, the singular there was being used back as early as the 1300s, I think it was. But they say grammatically there is incorrect because it's plural, and everyone, each teacher, and anyone are singular.
Right.
And for a long time, yeah. So, but we automatically, that seems like...
If I'm talking about a teacher and I don't know whether it's he, her, whatever, then using there is incorrect from those people, their point of view.
Right. Because there is a plural pronoun and everyone is a singular.
You're saying each teacher, meaning each individual.
Right. Right.
So it should be his or her? I mean, what are you supposed to say?
Well, that's what a lot of people have been trying to come up with this. That's the problem. Like, what is the non-gendered third person singular personal pronoun? And that's the problem, the issue that we have. Because you could say he or she, but then people complain, well, you're saying he or she all the way through the sentence and it gets cumbersome. It really slows down the sentence. And that's
not even taking into consideration that there are people who are non-binary. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right. We haven't even gotten to that yet. So people were having this before we even there have always been non-binary people, but this is something that people were discussing even before we considered that as an issue. We're just saying that we don't have a third person non-gendered personal
flawed
pronoun.
From the get-go is what you're saying. It's broken before we take it out of the garage.
Right. And people are losing their minds over something that is a flaw built into English.
Yes.
And in the 18th century, grammarians tried to solve it by using the generic he. And so people would argue, well, if we use he, in some cases, the word he refers to just males. And in other cases, it refers to both males and females.
Yeah, like the way actor is used now.
Right.
Actress is kind of faded. You may, now when you say a woman will say, I'm an actor.
Right. Instead of actress, you're not using one of those gendered nouns for it.
Right.
And so people would say things like, everyone should bring his own lunch on the day of the field trip. And we were supposed to know that in that case, his meant both males and females.
Yeah, but that's flawed. No. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, that's screwed up because it leaves out all females. You know what I mean?
And it's saying that his encompasses everything. It just doesn't work.
Well, you could guess the gender of most of the teachers at that time that came up with that. And so as a white man, it might be hard to imagine what this feels like to somebody. And you might want to say, oh, what's the problem? It's just a little word, He obviously means everybody. So to that, certain grammarians said, okay, well, if that's the case, then the generic she should also mean both men and female. So they started using she, the generic she. Everyone should bring her own lunch on the day of the field trip. And then it was men that lost their minds. We're like, hey, you're leaving us out. This isn't fair,
Right.
So, and then there was also a whole thing back in the late 1800s where people who tried to keep the vote away from women would use that generic, would use the he specifically in laws and in the Constitution to keep women from running for office or to keep women from voting.
Interesting. So we would discourage them or let them know there's a wall up.
And so Dennis Barron notes that some people would argue, for example, in the U.S. when the U.S. Constitution specifically says, in case of removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, because nowhere in the Constitution does it say he or she, then therefore it should be read literally, saying that president can only be a male because it's only saying he in there.
And so far, that's been the case.
Yeah, yeah. But then
it's worked.
yeah. But what's funny is suffragists like Susan B. Anthony responded that, quote, when the criminal laws referred to lawbreakers as he or him, no one doubted that these laws also applied to women.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah. And following the same argument that he in the law meant just men, in 1872, Susan B. Anthony said, quote, if, for instance, in the penal law there are no feminine nouns, women should be exempt from the penalties imposed.
Yeah.
And if men are to represent women in voting, let them represent her in all. If a wife commits murder, let the husband be hung for it. Isn't that brilliant? So what does that mean to us today, John? And it's basically in their book, Understanding Gender Identity, Braxton Phoenix Stock, who's transgender, quotes actor Laverne Cox, who says, quote, it is revolutionary for any trans person to choose to be seen and visible in a world that tells us we should not exist.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, as someone who loves individual freedom and who believes that consenting adults, as long as it's legal, should be able to do whatever they want, and everyone's consenting in their own homes or be whoever they want to be. The idea of someone being told that they shouldn't exist just kills me. It crushes
me. Yeah.
and
that's really what this all boils down to. It's respect. It's respect for the individual.
Right.
And I feel like those people who are afraid of how to use them, afraid of screwing it up, afraid of change, I think that understanding that this is a respect for another person is something we can all agree on, you know?
Right. Absolutely. And
except for the way you treat me. I feel like you're very disrespectful. You use thou, you thou me.
Yeah,
I you and you thou me.
Are thou available yet? Does thou have that money I loaned you?
You people don't know how I'm treated off the air by you.
It's interesting, and you nailed it with how Stock's book is very good, by the way. I recommend Stock's book for understanding transgender issues and the feelings that transgender people have. Stock says that neopronouns, these new pronouns that we've come up with, were created to give trans and non-binary folks the opportunity to find pronouns that more accurately represent their gender identity. Some people don't feel properly reflected by the conventional pronouns of he, him, she, her, or they, them, and prefer to use these neopronouns. And again, like you said, it's just a matter of respect.
Yeah. And with my friends who are trans, when I screw up, it's not a finger pointy thing in my experience. It's because you're trying to show respect. You're trying to understand that, hey, their point of view, and their, how they've been treated, just for them to be seen and by me, as a white dude, they're very forgiving and like, they get that it's a new thing, that it's hard. I get that it's hard.
And Stock says you should treat it as if you forgot somebody's name. Like if you just met somebody's name and you forget it, you call them the wrong, or you forget it and you just want to ask somebody like, hey, what was your name again? You can do that with pronouns. Just say like, hey, what pronouns do you prefer again? Or I'm sorry. But it doesn't have to be a big thing to make you feel confused or anything. Right. And we do it all the time with new people we meet as far as names.
It's weird because I find myself using the binary terms for all kinds of for everybody, because then you're never wrong.
Yeah. But you can imagine, like, if you were somebody, if you wanted to go by John, and you told everybody at your new job that you wanted to go by John, but they all just suddenly started calling you Chip or Jack or something,
right?
And you said, please don't call me. I prefer to be called by John. But they just kept calling you Chip or Jack. How would you feel? I mean, it's like they don't give a shit about you at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's what it's all about.
Right.
So just real quickly, going back to all of these supposedly new non-gendered third-person personal pronouns that everybody thinks are so woke and so recent, I'm going to go back to the chronology of different words that have been coined, and this is from Dennis Behrens' book, along with the date that they were first used.
Okay. Good. Like this.
So in 1841, the gender-neutral pronouns E, S, and M were proposed.
Instead of he, she,
E.
Like,
everyone should bring E's book, or everyone should bring E's book when on the field trip, for example.
Interesting.
So just the letter E. In 1850, we had Ni, Nis, and Nim. Okay.
I see where this is going.
In 1864, we had V, Vim, and Veer.
That's hard.
In
I don't
1870s,
like the V's.
But everyone should bring V's book. I saw Vim at the store yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think it's fascinating. People back in the 1800s were trying to solve this problem.
Yeah,
This
that's the whole point of your podcast. Of the podcast, is the lesson for today is this has been going on a long time because the language is flawed. It's flawed. We got to figure this out.
Right. It's nothing new, everybody. We've been doing it, and we're still trying to figure it out. In 1877, the word "ita" was proposed.
Ita.
So ita. ITA. In 1879, the words Hess, Hisser, and Himmer.
No, I kind of like that. It's German. It feels German.
Yeah, Hisser was a combination of his and her.
Yeah, his.
So
I like that one.
Everyone should bring his or book to the meeting.
Yeah, I'd go with. That's my favorite so far.
In 1884, the word "thon" or "thun," which is a combination of that and one, was introduced. And this one became really kind of successful at the end of the 1800s.
Thon.
And actually appeared in some dictionaries. THON. Thun.
Okay. Thun. It's not terrible.
I saw thun at the fair or something.
It's no hisser, but I'll take it.
In 1890, the Irish Times suggested hi, hess, and him. And then another writer in the 1890s proposed Lee, Lis, and Lim. L-E-L-I-S, L-I-M.
I don't know.
And then there was Zihi, Zihis, and Zihim, combining the Anglo-Saxon he with the Danish Z, Z-Y.
Okay. Not terrible.
There was also Hom, along with Ho, Hus, and Hum.
Okay, now you're talking my language. Ho, Hus, and Hum.
Yeah, like Ho. I saw Ho. Would you believe?
Is that Ho's book? Is that Ho book?
Yeah. I saw Hum yesterday, and Ho said that I should bring, and the compounds his, her, him, her, like you put a hyphen between them. And then in the 1890s, there was also whore, horse, and horself.
Okay, now I'm in.
In 1900, we get heesh, hisser, and himmer. And we also get here in 1900, a combination of his and her.
Yeah.
And then there was also Harris, Heris, which was a combination of her and his.
Harris.
Everyone should bring Harris' book.
Tough. That S at the end is tough.
I know. And in 1930, A.A. Milne, who wrote Winnie the Pooh, said that in a perfect world, people would use heesh, he and she.
Heesh.
Yeah. And in 1932, we also had ha, ham, and shas, and also he is, and he. And then we get into the 1970, we have she, Harris, and harem. 1971, Tay, Tare, and Tim. 1971, we also get she, XE, which a lot of people still use.
Yeah.
In 1979, we get here, Hearus, and Hiram, and Hearself, HIRSEL.
Oh, okay. I can do
and
that.
In 1982, we get she, Shem, and sheer.
Oh, I like that. She, Shem, and sheer.
She,
That's
Shem, and
good.
sheer, I think.
I saw that.
They should bring Sheer book. They should bring Cher.
Well, we're not just Cher, the singer Cher. We just use her name.
That would be fantastic. My wife would love that. So, in fact, Behrens says that over 250 gender-neutral and non-binary pronouns have been created over the last 400 years.
We gotta pick one and we gotta use it, people.
Yeah,
it's for our own good. It's gonna take some time, but I just my friends who are conservative who poo-poo the whole pronoun thing. I gotta say, and I say this to him, you sound old.
Right.
You sound like somebody that rock and roll Elvis is, you just you can't go back. You can't hold it, or you just seem like an old get off
asshole.
My lawn.
You sound like an old asshole.
It's like, dude.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I love the people. I want to see people just express themselves however they want to be expressed. If you want, tell me whatever. If I respect you and I love you, I'll call you whatever you want to be called. But be patient with me. Be patient with me if I screw up sometimes.
Right.
But,
yeah. It's hard. It's hard not to. It's like hard not cussing when you have to be around and you can't say fuck. That's hard for me.
So wrapping up, John, I just want to say these rules regarding pronoun usage are arbitrary. And just like the singular thou became singular you, languages change and pronouns change too. So people have been debating and searching for the missing non-gendered third-person personal pronoun for the past 400 years. And civilization, people have been using different ones, trying to use different ones. Civilization's still out there, but part of having a civilization is being civil, and it takes so little to be civil, I think. And a lot of times it's just letting people be and just respecting what they want to be called, And again, I want to say pronouns are social. And so using someone's preferred pronouns at work or school is just, like you mentioned, just a way of showing them respect. And ultimately, when the final judgment day comes, wouldst thou be an asshole or a dumb shit? All right. So
I
thanks.
will take dumb shit any day.
Me too.
Any day.
Me too. There's always hope for a dumb shit. An asshole, there's no hope. There's no hope.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, Professor McCray, thank you so much. This is human number 2 signing off.
And this is human number 1. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you, plural you, found this podcast interesting, please tell a friend about it. And thank you to our friend and listener, Frank, for helping us get set up on Substack.
Yes!
And be sure to check out Frank's sites on Substack, Media Room and American Karma. They're very good.
Very good.
Yeah. Frank is brilliant, funny, and lawyer, artist, musician, and I always learn something by looking at Frank's
read it every day. I read Media Room every day.
And thank you to Watson and Company Socks, who, by the way, just came out with a line of pastel socks.
Ooh, I haven't gotten them yet.
Really?
Oh
They're
God,
gorgeous.
They look great.
Don't
wow.
The pastels.
Wow.
There they
Those
are.
are
If
waiting
you're watching
for me at home.
If you're watching us on YouTube, I'm holding them up to the camera. Thank you to Puppies Not Piranhas on Etsy. And be sure to check out the Two Humans Cave Shop on Cafe Press. See you, everyone. And remember, somewhere out there in the world, these two dumb shits love you. We'll see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.